hear it on their side. Hello.
All right, we're live.
Here we are.
Okay, Tuesday, we're 15 minutes late.
Par for the course.
Kayla McDonald, Remax Alliance Group, Miss Lindsay Weber,
Hello.
Keystone Mortgage Solutions. And today we have Mr. Michael Constantine with Remax Alliance Group, and I'm very excited.
Careful what you wish for. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. I've been looking forward to this for a while. So.
Yeah, it stemmed from a conversation that you put on social media. You were having some trouble with, in my opinion, I'll call it unethical. I couldn't believe things that you were saying that was happening to your client, and I was trying to help, and we were kind of communicating back and forth, and unfortunately there was nothing that anybody could do, which sucks. But I think that that's kind of what initiated the conversation of, you know, things that take place within the real estate world that in your heart, you know the right thing to do, but in the rule book, you can't. So that kind of stemmed the conversation of, you know, what can we do and how can we fix things in the industry? And now today, we're going to talk a little bit about some new rules in the real estate world. So we're going to have you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, for sure. To get into what you just mentioned, that was, you go through, there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize that happens behind the scenes in the world of real estate and really in any business. Because to be honest, that happens in a lot of different lines of work. I know guys that work at auto dealerships or insurance sales or anything along those lines where you're face to face with your clients on a very regular basis. And what's unique about real estate is that you have one person on each side for representation. The only other industry I can think of with that is maybe attorneys. And so unless you have like doctors working together to figure out a diagnosis or something like that, but they're not going to combat the way that attorneys would. And combat's probably a harsh word, but that's the way, unfortunately.
Two different sides.
Correct. You know, I'm working hard for my client. They're working hard for their client. But, you know, I live by the motto of you catch more bees with honey. I try to stay away from being combative. I'm kind of known for the way that I am. I'm outspoken. I'm not shy, but I know my stuff. And so a lot of times that will offend other agents. And it's not that I'm talking down to them. I'm trying to educate them because I've taught classes on these things. I've been doing this for a very long time. And a lot of them try to peacock. And when they peacock, a lot of times they just get ahead of themselves and they bring out word salad of something that they don't, or they're not necessarily educated on. So in that particular instance, I had a client, they were relocating from Colorado, elderly couple. And unfortunately, a week, 10 days prior to where we were supposed to close, everything was set. Transaction had gone smooth. This agent was like, thank you so much. This has been a great transaction. Everything's fine. And I get a call from my client late at night, her husband actually. And he said, Mike, I've got bad news. We're not going to be able to proceed with the transaction. I said, well, what's going on? Help me understand. I go, is it something I did? Is you uncomfortable with the terms? Because I'll always find a solution to make it right, no matter what it is. And I've had to do some pretty extreme things before. But my ultimate goal is to get them in the house. I don't let anything get in the way of that. Not compensation, not whatever. I will find a way to do it because my reputation means more to me than any paycheck. So the husband's having a difficult time. He's like crying. And I said, is everything okay? And I won't talk about their names on a podcast, but, you know, I said, is everything okay? He goes, well, my wife had breast cancer years ago. And I said, wow. I go, I didn't know that. And he goes, it was very difficult for us to get through. So I said, look, not the same thing, but I can relate. My wife had cancer. And I remember it crushed me. I still remember the day. I went into the woods because I'm a hunter and fisherman and all that. And I literally cried my eyes out in the woods. And then I came back in. I'm like, I got to be tough for my wife, but I don't like people seeing me like not my normal self. Right. And maybe it's just a thing the way that I grew up, but you know, men aren't supposed to cry. People disagree with it. It is what it is.
It's a generational thing.
It's a generational thing, you know. And so I never, you know, saw my father cry. I can't remember him ever crying growing up until my parents got divorced. And so with this scenario, this poor guy's crying his eyes out. My wife can hear it on the phone. And I said, well, what's going on now? He goes, well, she has a terrible pain in her upper left side. I said, okay. I go, have you been to your oncologist? He said, that's why I'm calling you. He said, the cancer came back, but it's not breast cancer. And they have to go and they got to do different tests to see specifically what it was. And I said, it's none of my business. I'm so sorry. I don't need to know her diagnosis. I said, the fact that you're dealing with that is enough. Let me see what I can do. So I reached out to the seller's agent and I said, and this was a property up in Brooksville. And I said, look, we have an emergency that's really out of the ordinary here. My client just got re-diagnosed with cancer. We don't know the severity of it yet, but she can't get out of bed. Like, this came on fast. And I'm not sure if you guys have read about it, but there's a lot of what's called hypercancer that's happening right now. A lot of it is brought back to being vaccinated and the type of vaccine that you got during COVID, where a tumor will go from 0 to 1,000 like that. That's what happened to her. So I said, touch base with me after you go to the oncologist, which was on a Tuesday. He calls me up. He goes, Mike, it's terminal. She went from having nothing to having a massive tumor in a matter of days. Now she cannot even get off the couch or out of bed. It's that painful. So I went to the other agent. I said, look, here's a scenario. Put the property back on market. I'm sure it'll sell fast, because they did have multiple offers on it. But in my client's case, she was told that she has weeks to months to live. And not sure how you guys feel about language on this, but if I cross the line, just let me know and whatever. But I said that and so she says, I think that's bullshit. I think that your client found another house and they want a different house. I said, first of all, why would you think that? They did appraisals, they did inspections, they've agreed to be purchasing furniture from your client. They love this house. She just found out she has weeks and months to live. She said, well, we want medical proof. I said, have you ever heard of HIPAA laws? You can't ask for someone's medical records, and they don't have to show them to you.
No.
I said, but just the fact that you're asking me for that, I go, it really bothers me. And I was still being pretty calm with this agent. So she said, okay, I'm going to go back to my seller and see what they say. I said, look, if they want to, make a claim to escrow, at least split it with these poor people. They're not wealthy people. Right. They were basically putting their life savings into moving to Florida because their family lived on the same street and they just wanted to be there.
Right.
So she calls back. I mean, literally with a matter of minutes. I know she didn't talk to her client. I'm 1,000%. I'll go to my grave knowing she didn't talk to her client. She goes, no, they want all the escrow and you're going to give it to them. So I reached out to our in-house attorney, because at our Remax Alliance Group, we have an in-house attorney, which comes in incredibly handy from time to time. And he said, honestly, he goes, they do have the right to make claim to it because you're already past these. He goes, but there's a humanitarian side of things.
Right.
So we go back and forth. And I said, can you find some compassion? Like, if this is your family member, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, you would at least have a little compassion. I go, I'm not asking for the whole thing. Can you split it with him at least?
Right.
No, we don't believe that she even has cancer. That was her words. I said, I don't know these people personally. They reached out to me just through some marketing and advertising that I do. But the fact that you would say that is pretty horrible. I go, let's put this into context here. We're talking about a real estate transaction. This is not life or death. This is a business transaction from one to another. Your seller has not moved anything out. They have no expenses that they've incurred at this point. I said, I drove by the house. There's no pods there. Everything's still the same. You have no financial harm.
Right.
So in essence, we've been under contract for less than a month at this point. You bought the house, and I looked up how much they bought it for, which means your mortgage payment when you bought it is most likely less than the $2,500 substantially. Right. So at least they're getting a free month's mortgage payment and making a little bit of money for an inconvenience. Meanwhile, my client is dying.
Right.
So they say, no, we're not doing anything. Make a claim. So I call the husband. The husband was he goes, Mike, send me whatever. I can't deal with this right now. He goes, I'm literally sitting here watching my wife waste away every day, every hour. It gets worse. So I said, okay. I said, look, I'm terribly sorry. And he goes, look, I appreciate you fighting for me. But there's some things that I have to tend to my wife. And he goes, I can't take your phone calls anymore. He goes, it's just ripping me up. So I said, okay. So I send in the document, send it over. He signs the document, send it to the client, or send it to the seller's agent. I get a message a couple hours later from his sister who lived in Brooksville saying so-and-so just passed away. Thank you for everything you did. We greatly appreciate it. We're always going to use you as a realtor if we sell our house in Brooksville, whatever, but just understand not a good time to call about anything. And please pass that on to the title company too, because we're not going to be available for a while. So I reached out to the other agent. I said, hey, just so you know, I understand we just sent the addendum back. She died this morning. That agent basically said, well, that's too bad. We're still keeping the escrow. And I sat back. I said, did you hear what I said? I said, she died this morning. We were talking 4 or 5 days ago that they had to cancel. Now she's dead within a week. I go, they have no ill will. These people are not out to get you. I'm not out to get you. I said, so maybe you can ask your seller to reconsider. She goes, I'm not even going to bring that to them because this document is now signed, which technically she's right. Doesn't have to, but there's, a good way and a bad way to go about business. And I looked up the agent like I always do. She doesn't close a whole hell of a lot of business. So this paycheck was important for her. And I said that, and that's fine. And I wasn't going to bring that to her, but that is where people don't see things in the world of real estate, is that, whom you hire to represent you can make or break your transaction. There are a handful of us, and Kayla knows as well, that you work with on a regular basis. And our job is to make it as stress-free as possible for buyer and seller. How we get to that point, everybody's different. Yeah. And so for me, I'll never forget that one.
I'll never forget it. I wasn't even involved.
Yeah. I got so many messages about that on Instagram, on Facebook, on calls, text, all that stuff. People that I hadn't talked to in years. Yeah. And they're like, look, the fact that you bring
anything that could make them give it back, or just.
Yeah, we tried everything. I mean, our in-house attorney helped out. I asked my broker, I go, can you call broker to broker, something like that? He's like, honestly, not really. It's not something we really can get. And I agree. I mean, I think there's a time for business and there's a time for personal, but somewhere in the middle, there's a gray area that doesn't normally get delved into. And that gray area, it has to be explored, because I say the same thing on listing appointments. I say the same thing when I'm with a buyer. I want to treat your money like it's my money. And if I send $1 little out, I want it to come back with 2 or 3 little friends. And I'm going to protect your money. And that's why you're hiring me, because I'm very good at doing that. And other agents just don't see it. And it's sad, because everyone thinks that real estate's a very easy industry. You've made it look easy, beyond it, more than anyone I've ever seen. I'm not saying that because I'm on your podcast, and I've told you this privately. I freaking love the hell out of you and your story and how you built your business, because you've gone from 0 to 1,000 like that. For me, I remember how hard it was. I put a booth out in front of Christo's every Saturday and Sunday morning, and I'd sit there and do CMA. Then I would go to Family Fitness. 6 days a week I was there, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. My wife would show up to work out at 9 a.m. and I've already for 2 hours. Then I would go back between 6 and 8 p.m. to get the people that got off work. It took me 8 months to get my first listing. 0 paycheck, 0 nothing. You just said to hell with all that crap. I'm just going to start selling homes, and that's all I'm doing. And I've been looking back like, what the hell's Kayla doing? But it was really cool to watch, because you're genuinely a good person. And I remember going to BCMF, and you would give me shit and I would give you shit. Yeah. I'm like, I like this girl. This is awesome. And then when you called me about being a realtor, I'm like, oh, okay. We have the same common threads, friends network, all that other stuff. Yeah. People get offended by that in real estate. Wow. Tampa Bay is a small place. It is.
Tight group. You know how many friends that we have that are also realtors? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously I'm a real estate agent. So are you. Mm-hmm. And I'm more than happy to have you, because we're friends and I love talking to you about stuff. And there's a lot of times that I've called you and said, hey, what do I do in this scenario? Or what do you think about it? Or, asking for your advice, because you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. And like you said, everybody thinks real estate is so easy. It's not. Not sometimes it is. But then you have situations.
They're the ones that make you be okay with continuing to do it and not feeling
anything can happen. And in this scenario, like, nobody prepares you for something like that. And I think that shame on this other agent, because I've experienced a death And I think I called you about it actually,
Mhm.
and asked you like, what the heck do we do? And you're like, I don't know, so we, that's what makes it so important to be in good relationship with other agents, whether it's within your brokerage or not, because you can talk to each other about things.
Yeah.
And, like I said, shame on that agent, because if she would have presented that to her clients and said, hey, this is what's going on, she would have given them the opportunity to make their own decision. And I think that, and I hope
That's how it's presented too.
yeah, that they would have said, oh my gosh, let's just, they have more things to worry about than this money in our pocket, or, whatever. I think that they would have made a better decision other than their agent coming to them and saying, I think that this is bullshit and they're lying, because then that puts that into their head. If she would have just presented it like, this is what I was told and this is a scenario,
Make their own choice.
they can make their own choice. And I think
Right.
they probably would have given all the money back.
And that's, really in any industry,
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge. To me, that's what separates good from great. And good from great is putting business, when you have the ability to get the job done.
Mhm.
Fantastic. I don't care if you're a pit bull or if you handle things in a more calm manner. Personality wise, the best agents are the best communicators, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been doing it so long that they don't let the little things get them upset. Same thing when I was working in mortgage. In mortgage, guidelines change every day and you'd go nuts. But how you react to those guidelines is different, kind of what we're facing now, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah.
What people don't realize in real estate, and I get asked, what are some of the craziest scenarios you walked into? My first year in real estate, I walked in on a dead body in Holiday in Colonial Hills. Guy was a World War II vet. His son had called me saying, hey, I haven't heard from my dad. He lived in Washington, D.C. The guy was an attorney up in D.C. He goes, I haven't heard from my dad, but I got to sell this house. He goes, I think he just moved out or went somewhere. He goes, overnighted the keys, sent them to my brokerage. I walk into the house. The guy's, he was in in Holiday in Colonial Hills. They had a bathroom garage, a bathroom in the garage and then a bathroom in the house in their 2-bed, 1.5 bath model. He tripped on the threshold getting out, and just brains everywhere. And I had to, contact authorities. I contacted the son, and the son went ahead and he's like, oh, okay, well, if you can just call the cops and get him out of there, let's just get this thing sold. It's the one time that I can remember I lost my cool in real estate. I cussed him upside down and sideways. And I go, do you realize, because being a Marine and being in the military for a while, I take that personal. My grandfather fought in World War II. This guy had what's called a bird's nest. I looked at after I saw the body and all that stuff, I called the authorities, I called the son, and then you look around the house and you can see all his military stuff. A bird's nest is the number of medals that you have on the side of your chest. That will say either you're a badass or you just got really unlucky and went into bad places. Yeah. This guy had both. He had everything: Purple Heart, Silver Star, Bronze Star, everything but basically the Medal of Honor. And I said to him, I go, you know that your father is basically a war hero. He's a part of the greatest generation. He goes, yeah, I don't care. We just got to get this thing sold. I won't say what I said, especially on your podcast. I cussed his ass out. I said, don't you ever call me again. I will mail your key back to you or I will leave it here. You make your choice. Yeah. And then he told me where to put the key. And I said, best of luck to you. I want no part of this whatsoever. I've walked in on a guy that collected frozen poisonous snakes, which I have pictures of in my phone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he had frozen poisonous snakes everywhere. And I'm like, why do you do this? Well, I just like snakes and I catch these things and I just want to keep them around. I go, so you're keeping dead snakes throughout your house. I walked into I get hired by attorneys to deal with probate, estate, different types of situations. I walked into a gun put right to my forehead by a biker gang that was squatting in a house in Hudson, and they used it as a drug house. Mm-hmm. And I just had the key and I just opened it up. And the second I opened it up, gun right to my forehead. I said, I saw nothing. I wasn't here. I'm just a realtor. I'm sorry. And they were just like, get the out of here. And I just sat back and said, okay, well, this is a new experience right now. And I was carrying too. I had to
together and then I'm gonna leave.
I was carrying. I had my concealed carry and I was this close to pulling it out. And I was like, yeah, there's a lot more guys in there. And I've only got a handful. Like, time for me just to, get in my truck and get the hell out of here.
Bye.
But there's so many scenarios we run into. Some are unavoidable. Some are avoidable.
Mm-hmm.
But the interactions that we have And from you being in the mortgage industry, you see the different side of things like I used to. And there's good and bad in everything, but it's all in how you communicate. People, I shouldn't say people, realtors love to beat up on the lender, love to beat up on title because they never sat in that seat. They don't understand what you go through from application to initial underwriting to final underwriting to clearing conditions to guidelines that might change in the middle of a file, all those things. So as long as
one person sees it compared to the way that you see it, I mean,
you could have 5 different underwriters, they're all going to look at it a different way. And it's so frustrating, even on like a straight W-2 simple file.
Yeah.
You get into business taxes, I almost understand why they have all the multiple overlays, but the one thing is, like, a lot of realtors don't take the time. So whenever we have a new agent that comes in, and I think when you had gotten licensed 2018, 2019?
2020, actually.
Was it 2020?
Yeah.
I know we were talking about it, I think it was pre-pandemic, we talked about it, and then you actually got your license.
Yeah.
Perfect timing, by the way, because you hit the boom like perfectly.
You remember when I did the class and they shut everything down like right in the middle?
Yeah, you had to drive to Georgia.
Yeah, we had 3 days left in my class. And then since our class was so small, they allowed us to finish our course. And then I had my state exam scheduled already, but everything was shut down. So I was like, man, I'm like, I this is the worst time. I can't even take my test. Like, I think it was going to be like September or October. And then, because when they opened everything back up, it was like 25% capacity, which was like 2 people in a testing room, And then Georgia opened up and I got a spot in to take my test. And yeah, as soon as like Georgia opened up, like the restaurants and everything at 25 or some whatever capacity,
yeah.
We drove up there and I took my test in Savannah, Georgia on my birthday. So it was definitely a crazy and a weird experience. And I felt kind of defeated because I was like, well, this was a stupid time to get into this industry because, it was still like, it was April 2020. Everything shut down like middle of March. So nobody really knew what the heck was happening or going on, or if, everyone was going to die, or, you just see all these things.
But if you look back on that, and I say this at all the company meetings and all that, I learn from watching others.
Yeah.
That is a big reason why you're successful, because how many other people that were taking that test are like, I'm not driving to Georgia to take a test. You wanted it.
Yeah.
You wanted it. You studied your ass off and you deserved it. And you went up there, you passed it the first time, which is rare. Most people take 3, 4, 5, 15, 16 times to pass it, but you passed it.
Yeah.
But the fact that you had that drive inside of you saying, I earned this. I'm taking my test no matter where it is. Show me a time, place, whatever. It's to me, it was awesome. I loved watching it. I loved watching it. And that's my favorite thing that I've been able to achieve in real estate is I love watching others succeed. I love the phone calls I've gotten yesterday and the day before about this whole NAR settlement, because I immediately get educated on it. And then I'll reach out to some people that may have a different perspective. So I spoke with, attorneys from FREC, Florida Real Estate Commission, our in-house. We have an in-house broker that helps to write the real estate contract for the state of Florida. I'm like, I want to get the full picture, because I know the emails that we get, 99% is bullshit. It's just corporate speak, which is why I don't deal in corporate America, because I can't stand people in corporate America, for the most part, are robots. They are robots that are trying to climb an artificial ladder that is based on who's popular and who gets liked the most by the boss that controls the hiring. And it's frustrating because not always the best person gets promoted, but it's who can spin and say, oh, it's such a great thing that we just took a punch right in the face from NAR. No, that's not how it should go. People, and it reminds me of like Braveheart, the movie Braveheart, where people follow courage. It's the same thing in the military. There are some men and women that I would have followed into battle and laid my life down. And then there's others I'm like, what am I going to do with this guy? And you still have to do it. But I'm like, he has no clue what he's doing. He got promoted based on whatever. So it's an interesting time that we are in.
Interesting has been the word that I've been using. It's going to be interesting to see
how it all plays out,
how it all pans out, because, I know that you've probably researched it and did everything like tenfold of what I've done so far, because that's who you are.
I'm a real estate nerd.
Yeah, you are. All the stats and everything. And that's, that, and that's awesome. I love you for that. So, I can get the cliff notes from you.
I'll give you the full
I hope
notes.
to get
Yeah.
all the notes.
Yeah. I definitely want all the notes, and, you know, I have some perspective and thoughts about it, but I want to hear, what you have
For
to
those
say.
that don't know, can you start off and?
Yeah. So for those that don't
explain
know, the National Association of Realtors was sued magically by some homeowners that came out of absolutely nowhere in California, saying that we sold our house years ago and we don't feel as though we should have had to pay a buyer's agent. We should pay our own agent. I get that argument. I don't disagree with it, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
That's how Europe operates. So if you ever talk to Warren Ring from our office, he's from Ireland. And in Ireland, the listing agent is the only one that can sell the house. In the US, we have a better system, in my opinion, because if Lindsay's selling her house, Kayla is, sorry, I'm getting in front of the camera here with my hand, but Kayla can represent you as a seller. I would represent the buyer. To me, that's the most effective way to do it, because then you have independent individuals representing with no went out here, by the way. It for a second anyway, came back. But so what happened with this NAR lawsuit is they said, okay, it is unfair for homeowners to have to pay a buyer's agent commission and or have it advertised what they are paying out. Okay. So what is going on now is that they came out and they said you can no longer offer buyer agent commission on the MLS. You can't advertise how much you're paying. I don't even disagree with that, to be honest with you, because there are agents that are out there and they'll call even if they see a seller's paying out 2% or 1.5% or 3% or whatever, 2.5%. Hey, I don't work for anything less than this. There's a brokerage in Tampa, has 2 letters to it, and they do it all the damn time because their broker taught them to do it. The worst was during the pandemic, where they would call and demand, I'm going to give you an above asking offer, 10, 15, 20,000 over, but you will pay me and your seller will pay me this. I said, no, they won't, because I have a listing agreement that says they're willing to pay this much. Right. And it's very clearly in MLS. Well, I don't work for that much. Well, then you need to talk to someone else about a different profession, because that's what's being offered. And no, you are allowed to ask for it. So technically they're not in the wrong for asking for it, but demanding it is a different thing. And they would put it in emails. I said, that's where you went wrong. You put it in writing. And they were turned in to the board by multiple realtors. And that turned into misrepresentation cases, because they were doing what's called steering. They were steering clients to where the realtor could make the most amount of money. Greed, it's a very simple thing. If you ever go to a farm, the greedy pig gets slaughtered first. The one that's eating the most food, getting fat, that's the one that gets slaughtered first. So in this NAR settlement, they came out and they tried to spin it. So my bullshit meter went off the roof once I started reading what they sent out, saying that a jury of 12 people, none of which owned a home, not a single juror owned a home, period, meaning they haven't been through that home buying or home selling process. So I knew the jury was handpicked. Mm-hmm. Why didn't NAR handpick some of the jury? Because attorneys on both sides are allowed to select jurors. Makes you think a little bit. So they went in front of a judge on an appeal, because the initial ruling happened, I believe, in California, and then it was appealed in Missouri. I might have it backwards, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes. Well, they came out and they said, okay, we don't want to fight this. We're going to settle. Now, keep in mind, you pay realtor dues. I pay realtor dues. I think there's 2 or 3 million realtors in the nation that pay realtor dues. What people don't realize is there's certain monopolies that the government just turns a blind eye to. The National Association of Realtors is one of them. You cannot be a realtor or participate in the MLS unless you pay them their blood money to do absolutely nothing for you. They do nothing. During the pandemic, they were sending out these emails. If you are of this race and this color or this gender, you can participate in this training. But if you are a Caucasian white male, you cannot. It was clearly racist. And I sent them emails after email saying, how can you do this? There are rules. If I do that to a client, I lose my license. But
It's a Fair Housing Act. You can't do that.
Well, no, it's because we're not talking about housing. They're talking about trainings. So they were saying that there were underserved. They were saying that there were individuals in the realtor community that were underserved based on color, ethnicity, gender, whatever. Total bullshit.
Right.
Because everyone has access to all the online webinars, and all you need is a login through your MLS and or through NAR. If you're a part of a brokerage, every brokerage has webinars that you can go to, except some of the $0 brokerage ones, but you get what you pay for.
Right.
Even if you can't do that, you can always go on YouTube. All the classes are available on YouTube or Rumble or wherever you want to go.
Yeah, there's so many masterminds and coaches, and there's just so much. There's
Correct.
so many free educational tools out there.
Right.
Not just for our industry, but like you said before,
For anything.
for everything and anything.
We are living in the easiest time for human beings to live on this earth. You think just a short while ago, I mean, this country is what, 5 generations old? We have 5 grandparents that were at the very beginning of this. If you go back and you say the average lifespan is 90 years or 80 years or whatever it is, we're like 4 to 5 generations. We're not that old. But you think of what we were in the 1800s, and then we went to the 1900s, and the biggest jump is from probably 1990 to now. We have gone warp speed. Before that, it was like, okay, you had a box television with a knob on it. Then, a remote came out. We have a remote. We don't got to get off the couch and change the channel. And now it's like you have 7,000 different channels and nobody knows what to watch.
Right.
So going back to the NAR thing. So in looking at all the data, and I sat back and I tried to look at things from a macro level, and I spoke to one of the leaders of our brokerage about it yesterday. I said, I look at things from a macro level as far as what is the ultimate outcome? What is the ultimate picture look like for our industry? And he was kind of taken back by that. He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, think about it. They're starting with commissions. So that way a buyer's agent cannot know what they're going to get paid. You can go show a house and you have no clue if you're making $0, $1,000, $10. You have no idea because there's no offer of compensation available. Now, there are going to be ways to get around that, but this is the first step. So if you ever watch when somebody trains a dog or trains an animal, they start with little steps, and then those steps get more and more strict and more severe. And then, that's why you train the animal to the directed outcome of what you want. Well, that's what our government does on a very regular basis with a number of different things. They did it with the vaccine. They've done it with a number of different things that have turned out to be horrible consequences for the population. This is what's going to happen. My opinion is they're starting out with this no advertising commission. Well, once they go to the no advertising commission, guess what's going to happen? 2 million realtors, just to use a round number. There's about 20% of realtors that do the majority of the listings. It might be less. It might even be 10% nationwide. Most of us that have worked hard to build our base, that we do 30, 40, 50, 100 listings a year. It takes a lot of work to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of them are buyer's agents. So if you ever look at some of these large, massive teams, and there's some that are here throughout Tampa Bay, nobody wants to work with them because they are nothing more than a farm of inexperienced agents. And then you have the lead guy or girl or both. And then they just take a 50% split off them or 40% split or whatever it is. Well, they had to develop a rule called clear cooperation because of these big teams. And it happened during 2020, 2021, because they would be on both sides of the transaction. Mm-hmm. And their sellers had none the wiser, because I would say, well, Lindsay's a part of my team, so we're going to put her on the other side of this, even though it's my buyer. But all the money still goes into the big team, right? So this is how the trickle-down effect from this NAR ruling is going to work. Starts out with compensation. Now, 20% of the realtors are listing agents, which they're fine. There's nothing happening with listings. But what's going to happen to those other 80% that can no longer make a living because they are buyer's agents? They don't like doing listings, or they just don't have the network to build up to get those listings and things like that. Well, they're not going to be able to afford their MLS dues, because if they're not selling that many houses, why does it make sense to be paying the MLS, to pay National Association of Realtors, to try to even pay for advertising? Because most of the advertising avenues that you go into, if you're paying for leads, which I stopped doing years ago, but if you're paying for leads, now you're paying for leads that you have no idea what the compensation is going to look like.
Right.
So now, and those leads aren't cheap. You're 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 grand a month. I've been there. I've done it. I mean, I've paid $10,000, $15,000 a month on the Zillows and the Realtor.coms, years and years ago. Well, now those realtors, if they can't pay their dues, all these MLSs are going to be unsustainable. Because if you only have 20% of the realtor population, that's only 40,000 realtors based on a $2 million number. I think my math is right there. And guess what? Now those MLSs will go out of business. Oh, that's where good old Uncle Sam comes in government. We're going to take over the MLS. We're going to make a national MLS. And if we do it, it'll be homes.gov, or Zillow will handle it for us, or realtor.com, which we owned, and NAR sold us out on that. Realtors owned realtor.com, because you cannot be a realtor unless you're a member of NAR. Our dues paid for realtor.com to be developed, and then they sold it to a foreign entity. Guess what that foreign entity does now? They sell those leads right back to us. So now we're paying for something that we already paid for to have developed, and NAR sold us out. And they said, oh, we had no other choice. Great. We all got past that. No big deal. So now, if there's no local MLS boards, you're either going to have one for the entire state, but I think it's going to go national. Why do I think that?
Because the government's going to control it.
Because they are going to make it a flat fee. If you think about it on a large scale basis, and if I was a massive tech firm, I would want the exact same thing. Full transparency, that would be my ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. It puts lots of people out of business. But if you have Zillow sitting back, who happens to be a political campaign contribution lobbyist firm, all those big tech firms, they give all this money to these politicians. Guess what? I really want you guys to start sending more business our way. So we're going to go ahead and we'll be the MLS. We already have the algorithm for it. We already pick up all the listings already. We've got it down to a science. So now if a home seller wants to sell their home, hey, Mr. Home Seller, if your home is $500,000, we're going to sell it for a flat fee of $5,000. We will facilitate that transaction for you. We have hundreds of employees sitting in our Silicon Valley office that are more than capable of deciphering through contracts. Well, they're not licensed in all these different states, but we're going to help you with it. We're going to help you with it. So $5,000. Your buyer will find the home on Zillow or whatever website, homes.gov. I think it's going to be like the government taking it over personally because it's another revenue stream for them. I don't think they'll let big tech, but I think big tech's going to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. So they go ahead. Now it's $5,000 flat fee. You think of $5,000 flat fee based on the number of homes that sell annually in the U.S. Billions. They're going to make billions and billions and billions. But that's not it. Guess what? There's more. Here comes the ShamWow 3-for-1 deal. We're going to sell your home. Then guess what? We're going to be so nice. We're going to centralize your title and your mortgage here too. Yep. So we're going to make money on the front end, the back end, the middle end, the side end, everywhere. And you don't really have a choice because we're doing you a favor by centralizing this and making it so easy for you. Don't worry about the fine print. They're also trying to get rid of title insurance right now. They get rid of title insurance. You buy a house and then the previous person that owned it had an IRS lien that was attached to that address or something. Guess what? You now have to pay an attorney to go ahead and fight to get that off of your title if they can even find the person that sold the house. If they move to Siberia, guess what? They're out of U.S. soil. So now that debt is yours and you have to pay to get something that didn't belong to you off of your title in order for you to sell it and or avoid penalties and things like that. Here's where the NAR settlement got sticky. This is where Mike started doing some deep dive late at night, sitting in the lab with a pen and a pad, getting this label off. So I had to throw some Dr. Dre in there because, so NAR settled for one reason. NAR, if they wanted to appeal, would have to put up a $1 billion bond. If NAR put up a $1 billion bond, guess what? NAR doesn't have $1 billion. They would have gone insolvent, out of business, bye. So what do? We can't afford to appeal and we don't really want to go through all these attorney fees again. So tell you what, we're going to settle. We're going to settle for $400 and some odd million and let's see what the brokerages do. The brokerages will be a part of that too, which is going to offset our cost of having to do it. So not only did they not represent us, they saved their own ass and hung us out to dry, is what they did. And so if that's the first step, all of these other class action attorneys are just sitting there salivating right now, because it always happens. Every time it happens, they won't just accept the first verdict. And I'm not sure if you guys know this or not, but the US is the only country on earth that allows attorneys to advertise on billboards, TV, everything else. That's why we are the most litigious country on earth. You will not see billboards when you go to Europe. You will not see billboards when you go to the Pacific. You just won't see it. But
It'd be nice to not have billboards everywhere.
But guess who some of the biggest lobbyists are and the wealthiest people in the country? Just about every member of Congress is an attorney. Shocker. One of the biggest lobbyist firms that helps out politicians on both sides. This is not a Democrat, Republican. This is on both sides. Wow. All these attorneys just donate millions and millions and millions of dollars to campaigns. You know, it's amazing how legalized marijuana happened in Florida when it fell down until John Morgan from Morgan & Morgan came out and said, no, we're behind this. We got to get this going. Well, guess what? He's the biggest law firm in the country. Hey, I'm happy that he did it. I think it's great. I think it's long overdue.
Right.
But we are controlled by a small group of people that have a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the real estate world, we are controlled by generally two entities, National Association of Realtors and our local MLS boards. They make the rules that we have to govern by. Most of the people that work in those places never sold a goddamn house in their life. They are paid W-2 employees for the most part.
They make all the rules, but have zero idea how to do the job. Happened in our world.
It happens in mortgage all the time.
Yeah. I'm like, how does this even make sense? Doesn't even like go with the flow of, doing business. They have no idea.
Well, this is the part that's going to affect the mortgage side of things.
Is
that, guess what?
Across the board.
Who's this going to affect the most? I know that they're always talking about this DEI garbage, equity, inclusion and all that crap. Has nothing to do with business whatsoever. Yeah. It literally is the most racist policy I've ever seen. And it's hitting every industry, including our military. But who are the one type of buyer that are not allowed to pay? Literally, they're not allowed to pay. Correct. Yeah. Veterans. So if they have to pay, because we're supposed to do buyer's broker agreements now saying, if I represent you, you agree to pay. Wow. Veterans won't be able to buy a damn house. Why? Because the government controls veteran funding. They control the funding for veteran loans. And their guidelines state they are not allowed to pay for representation of any kind. So, wow. So now,
So what happens to them?
Say again?
So what happens to them? How?
You tell me how we're supposed to help. And I take that personal because I am a vet. And you tell me how we're supposed to help a veteran if the seller refuses to pay a commission and they want to buy that house.
The only thing that I can think of, is a contract saying, okay, here we have this veteran buyer, and make an agreement before they even go and see the house that
that's where the buyer
going to pay.
Well, the seller's not going to. Let me back up here for a minute. So Lindsay's selling her house. You represent Lindsay as the listing agent. First of all, try not to laugh at this because this is the scenario. I call up Kayla and I say, hey, Kayla, my client loves Lindsay's house. Their family lives right down the street. They want to come in. I guarantee they're going to put an offer in. But why don't you have Lindsay sign this saying that she's going to pay me before I even show the house? You're not going to sign that.
Sure. Right.
Right. So nobody's going to sign that. That would be crazy.
To the agent to agree to give a portion of their fee to pay the other agent.
Not necessarily.
That's how it is now.
Yeah.
But they're not going to show the house until they get that agreement. They don't know what they're getting paid. They have no idea whether you're going to give them the money or not.
Yeah. So, and I hear everything that you're saying, and I do, agree with you, and I understand everything that you said, because I never thought about it in that perspective, like that whole big picture. And so now my perspective, I'm like, okay, now I'm like the meme with all the numbers and X's and just like things going on in my
That's
brain.
real estate nerd head is what that is.
And I'm like, oh man,
I'm trying to find a way.
This is how I felt when COVID happened and I couldn't understand everything. But I think that, what are they saying? June, July is when they're going to, figure out all the.
It's supposed to be enacted by July. That's going to get pushed back most likely. So on our Alliance Group call this morning, thankfully we have the leadership we do because we are freaking blessed to have the leadership that we do. We have, I think, 5 different brokers now, and all of them do different things very, very well. but we have, one that physically is on the board to write the contracts and do that stuff. So it's most likely going to be delayed. And the reason being is because if you think about it, you have every MLS that now needs to change their entire format of how you list, because you can't have that compensation box in there anymore. They need to come up with rules with the attorneys from FREC and all these other states, because it's nationwide, that are going to be in compliance. Because here's the problem. Well, if you can't offer compensation, steering is illegal. Steering someone from one house to another is illegal. So if you're right, how do you avoid that? Because if you're calling and you say, hey, Mike, I want to show your listing. How much is the seller paying out? Okay, they're saying you can put it in somewhere in the MLS. It just can't be a direct percentage put in there. So it can be in an MLS attachment. It can be in possibly realtor marks. We don't know. But clear cooperation comes into play. So I sit on the grievance committee and the professional standards committee for West Pasco board. I take pride in doing that. I go to all their trainings because it keeps me sharp. And I learn more from watching what other people do than making my own mistakes, because people do some really dumb shit. And I've sat there, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You actually did this? And these are realtors that sometimes sell a lot of real estate. They just do stupid things. And unfortunately, sometimes they pay the price for it. But in clear cooperation, thinking about it, big picture, and this is what I expressed to one of our, leadership from Alliance, is I said, hey, what's to stop these mega teams or brokerages where everybody works for the broker? Because there are brokerages out there that you cannot be an independent agent. You give that broker a split of everything you make, and everybody is basically getting, it's like a lead farm. So what's to stop them from going into a listing appointment and saying, hey, Miss Weber, I got a great opportunity for you. You're going to love this. There's a lot of realtors that are out there that want to come and list your property, but they're just one realtor. They may sell a good amount. They've been in the business a long time, but guess what? I have 75 agents on my team. So I will list your house. Then you have 74 buyers that are going to be with these agents. We can sell it by ourselves. That sounds a lot like breaking clear cooperation, keeping it inside of your own brokerage without advertising it to the public. Now, there's some little tidbits in there where clear cooperation was designed around, you can't have coming soon listings. So that way you can't get people to come in. You can't put a Facebook post out there saying, I have this house coming on market. Even if you don't say coming soon, you just can't even mention it. And that was good for the public, because this is what happened in 2020, 2021. The mega teams got busted because they were doing that. They would hoard all their listings. And I remember I wrote, actually, I won't even go into the one I wrote. There was one specific one down in Sarasota. This guy sold $2 billion with a B. You talk about a bad mofo. This guy was a freaking animal of a realtor. He only worked in the $1 million plus space. He was very well known. He listed a house, and I believe the house was listed at $4.5 million down in Sarasota on the beach. Beautiful house. There's an article about it in the Tampa Bay Times and I think 2 other papers as well. Well, 4 offers came in. Why? Because $4.5 million, you get people coming from California. That's a $30 million house. And they're like, 4.5, I'll buy this all day. Yeah, so you get people coming from Manhattan. You can't buy a parking space in Manhattan for $500,000. So that for them, they're like, I can't write a check fast enough. This is amazing. I'm going to live in the most beautiful neighborhood, gorgeous boat dock, pool, all that good stuff. Well, this realtor, which will happen during this, I guarantee you're going to see lawsuits for it. He went ahead, had 4 offers come in. 3 of the offers, he just told the seller, this is per the article. I don't know this to be fact, but I followed up and I've read about the lawsuit that's going through. And so he went ahead and he said, I've got this great all cash, no contingency offer. I happen to have the buyer, but I know that this is the best offer for you. Seller signed it. Seller closed. Seller was happy. Well, God, that little community of these multi-millionaires is a small little community. And guess what? One of the guys that put an offer in is an extremely high-powered attorney out of Tampa. So he was walking in the neighborhood and he went up to the seller who no longer owned the house. He said, I don't understand. I put an offer on your house with an escalation clause up to $5 million, but you accepted 4.5. The guy goes, I never heard of that offer.
Right.
I never saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So then guess what happened from there? They went to every neighbor that had sold a house in that neighborhood. This attorney brought forth the lawsuit. The seller, because in Florida you sue the brokerage, not the agent, but the Florida Real Estate Recovery Fund, I believe it's only 25 or 50,000 you can recover. Anything above and beyond that, you can sue that agent personally. I believe you can sue them personally. And in this case, according to the paper, he was getting sued. So the seller is trying to recover the $500,000 because he cost him $500,000 because the other offer was non-contingent also, same thing. But this greedy pig of a realtor said, man, it's not good enough on a $4.5 million listing to make a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, he was making, I think it was $192,000, which is insane.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you operate in those $1 million spaces, good for you. If you can tap into that market, good for you. I'm a big capitalist guy, so make your money while you can.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where, going back to what I was talking about, the greedy pig gets slaughtered because he just ran into a bigger bull. And the bigger bull was that attorney that tracked down the seller. And now in all these houses that he sold, they went back, I think, 3 or 4 years to see how many times he did this. And it was multiple, where he just happened to double end all these deals that had offers that came in. And guess what? He's probably going to do jail time. He's most likely going to lose his license. His brokerage, for whatever reason, came out with some ridiculous public statement saying that he did not do anything wrong. Everybody knew he did something wrong. It was very clear he did something wrong. But here's the kicker. This is why being at a brokerage like ours, that I genuinely do love our place where we work, matters. Because a month later, not making this up, a month later, another agent from that brokerage did the same thing in Tarpon Springs and got busted for it. So clearly it was being taught by the brokerage.
Right.
Because you can't have two examples that close together. So now that brokerage happened to have gotten sold. It's a national, well-known name brokerage, but they're all independently owned and operated. But that lawsuit's still going on, and it's probably going to go on for a while. But how do you go from selling $2 billion to I need some extra money?
It doesn't even make sense.
I mean, you've made a very good living for yourself.
Yeah.
And at what point is enough? And that's why whenever you've been in, classes that I've been, have to speak at for Alliance Group and other things, my favorite thing is watching agents grow. I freaking love it. It's better than any paycheck. It's better than anything. I love, if just somebody just needs that push to get over there, and some do it easier than others. And then some are going to fight you on it tooth and nail. But once you get to that point, and my biggest thing that I always preach is catch more bees with honey. Don't ever look at a paycheck. You do your job the same way if it's a $50,000 trailer or a $5 million mansion. You do your job the same way. That's how you build a reputation. That's what separates good from great. As times shift with this NAR settlement, now you're bringing in desperation.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Incomes are going to go down substantially. When incomes start going down, people do stupid things. They try to skirt the rules.
They go past that gray area. So
Correct. And so, there's something I'll talk to you privately outside of the podcast about that is going on right now with investors. And there are some investors are wanting to gobble up properties left and right. You make one listing, you're going to get 5 complete total garbage offers. House is listed at $500,000. We'll close tomorrow at $341. My response is always the same thing. Send me your home address. I'll pay you 50%. I'll close on the same day. Let's do this.
Well, and they don't even send you over proof of funds or nothing in writing.
But it doesn't matter because their offer's ridiculous.
Right. And that's why they do it that way, because they send out the same email probably 75 times a day.
Right.
And, obviously they're not going to put everything in writing because they know that they might get one desperate seller.
But it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
So they hire people to literally scrub the MLS. And a lot of these times, these are licensed agents that they have a pre-filled email and they'll just change the number, change the address, change the number, boom, 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 boom. Send them out as they go on market, or they wait till it gets to 30 days on market. Or when they send them to me the same day it comes on market, I just sit there. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, are you serious? They're on market for less than a day and you want to, I don't care if the house is 200 and you're trying to offer 100. It's their home. Why would I represent them and advise them to do that?
Like, yeah, that's a great idea. Stupid. They all annoy me very much. Or like the text messages you get, all day long from people,
right?
Wanting to sell your personal house, buy your personal house, or flips, and just it's constant.
But what's getting bad now is like local investors. So there's local investors that call realtors up, and this is where the desperation comes in, which there's going to be issues with this because it's 100% illegal. And not that it doesn't happen. I know for a fact it happens. And I know a very, very big time realtor here locally that was doing this with home builders. Hey, I'll tell you what, Kayla, I got this great thing. You got this listing, right? Oh man, I want that listing. So you talk your sellers into it. And I tell you what, I'm going to give you a stack of cash on the side outside the closing. I'm just going to do that just because you're great. But they do it.
I know. Yeah.
And that's the same thing that happened with major home builders, where you would have realtors that go in and they would just say, hey, I know I'm getting paid X amount on this. I don't really have to do a lot of work because you're just going to send me the leads. I'm going to get the listing on their home to sell. And then I'm going to get this one. And then they would just show up and just, and they would just kind of do that. I mean, when I owned a restaurant, I saw realtors come in with home builders. $1,500 tab, whatever it was, $2,000 tab. And then at the end of the night, they all had like little gift bags in front of them and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like,
This is interesting.
I'm like, this is interesting. But I was in the capacity of owning a restaurant. None of my business what they do, and I can't speculate on what they did. Right. I know what happened. But once again, that's your business, not my business. And I like to think I have a good reputation in the industry. I have worked hard to get that reputation. Some people love me, some people don't. That's fine. But I'm never going to bullshit you. I'm always going to be dead straight to the point. Sometimes I'm a little bit too direct. But I'd rather do that than have to remember a lie that I've told, because you will get a lot that will do that. And you can tell when they start doing it, they start stuttering while they're talking to you. It's like, oh, are you having a hard time remembering what you told me? Let me refresh your memory. You told me this, and then on Tuesday you told me this. Which one is it?
Well, and I think that honesty, whether it's direct or a little bit less direct or blunt or however you want to say it, is, to me, is more appreciated in today's world, because a lot of things now are fluffed, and you really can't believe almost anything you see or read online or on the news. So I would rather you be honest with me and direct, and it might, kind of, hurt my feelings a little bit, or, catch me off guard, but I'd be, at least I could trust and know what you're saying, right? And I could believe you and be like, okay, this is it. These are the steps that we need to move forward from whatever the situation is.
Yeah, there's too much sugarcoating, period, in my opinion, in our world. And that's a lost art, because, honestly, that's why kids are dicks these days, because their parents weren't allowed to spank them and smack them. And some people may disagree with that. I was brought up with a leather belt, and my dad had this thick leather belt. And if we went the wrong way, it would hurt. It would hurt. But I usually wouldn't do that again. Sometimes I still did, but just because
you knew it was happening.
Right. It wasn't
by consequence.
It wasn't, let's go to timeout, little Jimmy. Jimmy, go to timeout. Have you learned your lesson, Jimmy? Oh, you don't lie to mom. You don't call mommy a bitch. You just sit there and think about that. No, you call my wife a bitch, I'm going to smack the shit out of little Timmy.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how it is. That's why, a lot of kids, like, people reached out to me in 2020 because when the schools were closed, the first thing I did is I went back to my days of growing up, and I said, my kids are going to learn how to change a tire. So I put a video out there of me teaching them how to change a tire. They learned how to cook. They learned how to mow the lawn. And we live on 2 acres, so mowing the lawn is not a short task. They learned how to fix things. I taught them, some very, very basic life skills of what you need to do. My wife was like, this is pretty cool. I'm like, all I'm doing is going back to literally shop class, home economics, the basics, right? So Also in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I looked at my wife. We're sitting on the couch, and I said, we gotta get out of here. They're gonna shut down airline travel. We may not be able to go somewhere for a while. So we went to Alaska. Holy cow, what a freaking eye-opening experience that was. Do you know that kids in Alaska, in their school, we're in the same damn country, the same freaking country. In Alaska, they have to learn basic carpentry, basic mechanics so they can fix a snow machine, a car, and then sometimes a small plane, because Alaska has the most illegal pilots in the world, because to go to different places in Alaska, a lot of times you have to fly.
Yeah.
So they're flying these little cub cadets or whatever they are.
It's like taking the car.
You'd see little like 15-year-old kids and 12-year-old kids just getting in a plane, gonna go to grandma's house in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
But they had to know all these things. Like they're basically like a miniature general contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I love Montana. I love Alaska. When we went into this restaurant, there was this little girl. I will never forget watching this little girl. My kids were with me. And I told my kids, I go, I want you to pay attention to this little girl. She went from table to table. I've never seen a human being do this in a restaurant, period. She wiped off the napkin holder. She wiped off the underside of the table. She'd remove the cushions, wipe under there. I mean, it was as sanitized as a freaking operating room. And so I said to the little girl, I go, how long have you worked here? She goes, well, my parents own this place. I said, okay. And I gave her a $20 bill. She goes, what's this for? I said, you are the hardest working human being I've ever seen. And I go, and I like to think that I work pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nothing compared to you. Like you take pride in this. And the parents came over and they said, no, you don't have to tip our daughter. I said, no, I do. I go, to be honest, I'd like to give her more. And they go, why? I said, first of all, amazing job to you two as parents, because in the lower 48, we don't see this. We just don't. If kids have to go be, get a job, they bitch about it. Kids don't want to learn how to drive anymore. They don't want to do anything that requires effort for the most part. There are exceptions.
Crazy. You're right. They don't like to drive.
Mm.
It's the weirdest thing.
No.
I couldn't wait
They
to
don't wanna
drive.
drive.
I thanked my parents. I signed myself up for driver's ed because my parents didn't want me to drive.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I'm taking this class in school so I can get my.
They have no problem.
I was driving a stick shift. At 13 years old, I was driving a stick shift.
Yeah.
I remember I learned on a little Saturn coupe that my grandfather had. I
Mhm.
destroyed his transmission, but whatever.
Hey,
But, you think about those things. And then when you see the exact opposite while you're out on vacation, I was like, God, this is amazing. And the parents the girl said, she goes, this is my parents' restaurant. This is our livelihood. We don't have any other choice. We don't have any other employees because with COVID, I guess they had some issues going on where they couldn't have certain employees come in and things like that. And it was just so cool to see that because it's just such a lost art. Not to mention Alaska is by far the most free state everywhere. I freaking love seeing in an open carry state like a 90-year-old lady with like a 357 Magnum or a 454 Python on their hip or something. And I would just stop and I'm like, man, that grandma's a badass,
Yeah.
But it was just cool because to me, like that, it was going back in time, and it wasn't really going back in time to like the 1700s or something crazy. It's going back in time where people respected each other.
Yeah.
You go look at all these states, and not to get all crazy or whatever, but obviously I'm very pro-gun, being military. You look at these states, all open carry, all have issues with bears, mountain lions, stuff like that. They have to open carry because you can get attacked when you're walking or whatever. No mass shootings happen in those states. Wow. Because everybody's freaking armed.
Right.
And then you go and you look in Chicago, has 10 shootings every weekend. There's 35, people that get killed, or major cities. And wow, we have the strictest gun laws and people are still getting guns. Wow. Because criminals don't care.
Yeah.
Shocker, But I don't know how I got on that topic, but
That's okay.
but anyway, so it was cool to watch that little girl. I think her name was Kaylee, if I remember, something like that. I'll never forget it. Watching someone literally take the napkins out, wipe the inside of the thing. I mean, every inch was sanitized, and it just felt good, and then we came back, and of course that's when the restrictions came in. So I put on my military grade gas mask that I may or may not have gotten out of the supply room when I left the military. And I went on a showing with my full gas mask on because I refuse to wear those face diapers. I just refuse to wear them. And so I'm wearing a full military gas mask and people are like laughing at it. And I'm like, hey, you want to get stupid. Let's take stupid to a whole different level.
Right.
I saw some really crazy things on the internet of what people were wearing, like in the stores, and I mean, looking back now, you kind of just have to really laugh. I mean, I laughed then, but like now,
I mean, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
You're breathing in everything that you're breathing out. You're wearing gloves, you're touching whatever. It's amazing.
On the way to Alaska in Seattle, which was our, the hub of lunacy, there was a person walking through the airport in a freaking bubble suit. Not kidding. Clear bubble suit. Had legs. Yeah, it was like the Michelin Man, but clear. I'm looking, I'm like, what the hell? How can you get through TSA with that? How can you get on a plane with that? And then when we landed, there was the, member of Antifa that was sitting 4 rows back from us with, bright purple rainbow hair and all that stuff, yelling at my child. Now, my kid was 14, 15 at the time because his mask went below his nose. She gets up screaming, "You're killing people. You're killing people." I go, calm down. We landed. We're getting off the plane. We're good. And she just kept trying to berate my son. So, my trigger kind of snapped. I go, "Aren't you late for your Antifa rally?" And the plane was all laughing. And I just sat there and I'm like, I go, "We'll be off the plane in a few minutes." She's like, "Your son is killing people." And I said, "Right now you're talking and that mask does not stop your droplets from coming through. So technically you're killing people too."
Yeah.
I'm like, "So just calm down." I go, "We're on an FAA plane. I'm sure that there's guards on here. I don't want to go to jail. You don't want to go to jail. So let's play a little game called Shut the Hell Up. And we'll grab our luggage and leave. And then you grab yours and leave." And on the whole way out, people are high-fiving me and stuff like, "Man, that Antifa comment was awesome." And I just sat back. I go, I don't care if somebody is a Democrat, Republican, what, I don't care. But you don't yell at other people's kids, especially on an airplane, and it's, you catch more bees with honey kind of thing.
Common sense.
So,
And just respect everybody. Everybody, whatever views you have, there's always been opposing views.
Sure.
Not everybody is going to think alike, and it's always been that way.
Okay.
And that's okay, and that's when, new things come into play. You have to be able to talk about things, and you just have to have a common respect for each other, which is another thing. It kind of goes along the lines of with everything we've been talking about in, our industry, any industry, and just being a human being in general. But
I think social media is what's crushed that.
Yeah.
Because I talk to my wife all the time about if she lost her phone, she would have a very difficult time existing. Because, TikTok Jamie, she puts out all her videos and stuff. I mean, she wakes up in the morning, she's on it, she's whatever. And I love her no matter what she does. Till the day I die, that woman is my partner in life. But if she didn't have that damn phone, I don't know what she would do. She would go nuts. And I think for that's most of society. They I listen to Rogan quite a bit, and he had a guy on there that was, in that field. The average person checks their phone. It was like 392 times a day, the average person, because they've made it addictive.
Yeah.
And so if you look back to how people resolved issues, you're a little bit younger. I'm pushing 50, no idea where you're at, but you're the youngest of the three of us. And so
it was face to face.
It was face to face. And if it's face to face, you work things out. You learn to communicate, or you fight in the bike rack at 3:00 after school, and then you're right back on the football field or soccer, tennis court, or whatever sport you played. You went back to like, "Hey man, I'm sorry. You beat my ass, or great, or I beat you. Great. But you solved your problem and you moved on." Now it's so easy to sit behind a keyboard and be like, "I'm going to get you," and they start just typing and typing and typing. But it also brings out the worst in humanity. So for me, if you ever go into my office, I have a whiteboard, and on the whiteboard, I wrote the 3 R's. So the Navy SEALs, a lot of the Navy SEALs anyway, they use the 3 R's: receive information, reflect on the information, then respond to the information. Too many people go straight to respond. I'm guilty of it too.
We're human.
But I do my best to make a calculated effort to understand the other side prior to going to that level. And it depends on the topic, because a lot of times, like, I used to fight just to fight, like on social media. And I had to sit back. I'm like, this is not making me a better person. It's not helping my brand or my image in any way, shape, or form. But it's also not helping my relationship with that individual. And life is too short to have enemies. And sometimes you can't avoid it. If people do horrible things, great, rear view mirror. That's the way I think of it. You're in my rear view mirror now. I know who you are, but we're not hanging out. You're in my rear view mirror.
Right, and you can control that.
Absolutely, you can control it. And the best part is when they try to like send that text like 6 months later, hey, things have settled down. No. You just go eat yourself a nice big bowl of go fuck yourself soup, because what you did is unforgivable. Have a great time. Not going to talk bad about you. Don't care. Let's move on.
Right.
But social media, when you think of it, has just made it an entire generation growing up, which is why when I was going to school, back in the 80s and early 90s, I don't remember protests. I don't remember people being disrespectful to police, because social media gives you that sense of security. Nothing's going to happen to me. I can say what I want. I'm in my safe space. I just saw New York City came out this morning. Cry rooms.
What?
Yeah, no, a cry room. They charge $20 for 30 minutes, and you can go into a room that is going to play sad music. And if you just feel the need that you need to cry, there are cry rooms now. Are you effing kidding me that society has gotten that soft to where you need safe spaces and cry rooms? And if a kid comes to my kid's class and he identifies as a cat, he can literally have a litter box. They have litter boxes out. Yeah. Like Oregon, Washington, California. your kid can have a litter box.
They're called furries.
Furries. Yeah.
Yeah.
My children have mentioned that in the past.
It's lunacy, and it's completely being enabled,
It's
Man, did we go a different direction after that whole NAR thing?
I told you we can talk about humpback whales if you want.
Let's do it.
You did, and I forgot.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's funny.
that's one thing that I like about our show. We can go in so many different directions, and we've covered a lot of topics here.
I did.
And I feel like it kind of all stems back to one thing: is just being a good person, in your life, in your business. That's something that we're lacking, across the board.
I think in every industry.
Yeah.
And the best part is it's free. It costs nothing to be nice. The number of people, there's one I'm trying to work through right now. I won't mention names, but person reached out to me. Hey, I want to come work for your company. Meaning Alliance Group.
Yeah.
Can you put me in touch? I said, yeah, no problem. And I thought this person, I was like, yeah, I've talked to them a few times, hung out with them, I think once at a meeting or something like that. Didn't really know them that well. So go in, put them in touch with the right people. They asked me if I endorse this person or not. Will you vouch for this person? I said, yeah, go here. I'm just going to put them in front of you. It's your money you're spending to bring them on board. I want nothing to do with that. But yes, I think they're a good person. I would think that they can be an added value to our brand, not only for recruiting other agents, but also to help agents who are not good with technology. Person goes through, gets an offer that they want. They're supposed to, come to work, and they say, I don't want to go there anymore. This is like over a month or two. So they, reach out to me and say, hey, decide to go a different direction. I'm going to go work for a real estate team. I'm telling you, that's a bad idea, because that's not a long-term career. This is the long-term career for you. So going back to social media, they put out a post. And by the way, if you're going to hire somebody to do your social media, pay attention to their social media. We talked about this in one of the Alliance classes. I'm a Facebook stalker, mainly on realtors, because I want to see what they're doing. And I look across the country, friends with a lot of realtors. What are they doing? How can I use that for my brand? What are they doing? Is it good or bad? All that good stuff. But if you're going to hire somebody to do that for you, at least look how many likes, how many shares, how much engagement are they getting on their own post. If they're only getting 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 likes, guess what? They have zero audience.
Right.
They might know how to do these things, but they don't know how to capture that audience. They don't know how to build that brand. Anybody can set up a Facebook page. I mean, we had a guy that came into Alliance 2 months ago.
Mhm.
He was trying to charge people like $2,000 to set up a Facebook and Instagram that has all the little, direct buttons to where you can click on, saying, click on for a CRM, click on for your website, whatever. I forgot what they call those little, the little buttons that you can throw on Instagram. Anyway, so he was trying to really rip people off of that. And he went in, and this is where the ShamWow comes in, right? Because everybody wants to be a freaking ShamWow guy these days. I don't know why they want to be the ShamWow guy. And so we get to the end of the presentation. It's like an hour long. And every time he would say, well, this realtor uses my services. Great. First thing I would do, I had Warren sitting next to me, is I would Google that realtor and I would go on their reviews. Right, immediately. I'm like, would you look at this? I go, this person sold one house in 2022. And then it was like the same thing across the board. He had one large individual, which in California, that was a part of his group. But this is where the ShamWow guy came in. At the very end, he's like, all right, guys, I know that I sent this out to you, right? You got the brochure. Okay, you can see it's a $5,000 package, $4,995. But guess what? Guess what I'm going to do for
Guess
you?
what the price is today.
Yeah, I'm going to discount it 90%. So for $499 instead of $4,099, I'm your guy. I'm going to set up your TikTok and they're all going to talk to each other, your Instagram and your YouTube and all this. And then I'm going to show you how to get clicks and reviews. But here's the content that we're going to put out. And he freaking puts this list together. First picture of you with nothing more than a beverage and your feet crossed by a pool, saying not all days are work days. Great marketing there, Chief. Then he goes in. Then he goes in.
Working for you, I'm lounging by the pool.
Right. But those are the posts. He goes, those are the engagement ones. He goes, and then from there, you're going to move into what everybody's doing these days, which it is what it is. Hey, which one do you prefer? This one or this one? Just to get people to answer. Or what's your favorite 80s show? Just to get engagement. I get that. That's fine. But he had 8 people sign up while we were there. 8 people. So I sat back and I'm like, okay. And Warren's sitting next to me just laughing his head off. He goes, you always dig into things so much. I go,
yeah, you do.
I go, why wouldn't I? Because if he's giving me a list and showing me how great this realtor's page is,
prove it.
How does that page correlate to dollars and cents in their pocket?
Mm-hmm.
None of them had a Zillow page or realtor.com or even a Google page where you get your reviews. That's where people find realtors. The 3 best spots, Google reviews, which Google will delete your reviews. They did that to me. Yeah. In the last election, I went from like 170 reviews and then everything. My Facebook got deleted and hacked. My YouTube channel, which I had my Forrest Gump videos on, that thing had over 30,000 views. I had to rebuild the whole thing. But big tech will do that.
They were good. And your rock videos.
Oh, yeah. But see, to me, everybody, so I'm glad you brought that up because I'm not scared to take chances on anything.
No.
I don't have the best voice. I'm not Jen Verge. But I will get on a karaoke stage and make a complete ass out of myself because I don't care. It's fun. It's fun. I had a cartoon image put on my business card because I can't compete with pretty women. Nobody wants to look at this mug. When I'm looking at billboards of all these, beautiful women, most of which have like glamour shots from 1985 that they're still using. And then you see them. There's one in frickin' Trinity. Oh my God. I showed up to a closing and
she looks like it all.
I remember seeing her advertising because she does a lot of advertising. I'm like, oh, she's a, cute little older lady, whatever. I show up, bright ass purple hair. And I'm like, what the French toast is this? I was like, you don't look nothing like that picture. But, there's good marketing and bad marketing. So with the Forrest Gump thing, that was my most successful one that I ever did. And I knew that it took my business from 10 million a year to the year that I released Forrest Gump. I think I did 35 million that year. It was my best year ever. Came with a lot of stress that I didn't want, but it got me on the map. And then I was consistently, top 5, top 10, no matter where I was. And that's where I wanted to, that's the area I wanted to live in. We checked in. We went to Yellowstone National Park. We stayed up in, it's my favorite place on earth. So we checked into Bozeman, Montana, and we stayed at a hotel that was right at West Yellowstone. We get there at 11:30 at night. The guy behind the desk goes, you're the Forrest Gump realtor. And I sat back, I'm like,
Recognized.
and we had, you know, people that we used to hang out with us, and they go, can we go anywhere without somebody knowing you? So I look at the guy, and not kidding, by the way, guy had wooden teeth. He had wooden teeth, and it was weird, but he was behind the desk. He checked us in. By the way, greatest hotel I ever stayed in because there were so many animal mounted heads in there. And I walk in, I'm like, oh my God, look at that, look at that.
Like, this is happening.
It was like my dream man cave, you know? But so the guy sits there, he goes, my dad lives in Tarpon Springs, and he sent it to me. The guy who was behind the desk owned the hotel. He used to be a Google executive that decided, I just want to retire in Montana and own a lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat back, he goes, I've watched that video so many times. And I sat back, I'm like, thank you so much. I go, I didn't expect this in Montana.
Right.
We're like the two furthest points you can get from east to west.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, from that's where the other videos came in. But I got known for that. And then the best part about that whole thing, doing a big 360 loop, is there were some other realtors locally that tried to replicate what I was doing. And I would get calls from people going, do you see this idiot trying to do what you do? And I sit back, I'm like, no, I haven't. And they'll send me the video. But that tells me that they're my client now. Yeah. That they think of real estate, they think of me, because I did Duran Duran, Bon Jovi, Forrest Gump, The Patriot, riding on a horse. I mean, I did a lot of different things, and I would always include my clients in that. And so I did it with, like, people, you know, people's kids would want to be in my videos. So I'm like, all right, awesome. Yeah. But that was about a 3-year span where that's just what I did. And that's how I marketed. That's how I advertised, because you always have to be ahead of the curve. And what happened from that, and this is, to me, this is how marketing truly works, because anybody can market in a farming area. Anybody can say, I'm going to market only in Trinity with billboards, radio, whatever you want to do, right? Mm-hmm. I got calls from 7 different countries from agents referring business to me.
Because, yeah.
And just that year, just in that year from referral business, I made more from referral business than I ever made at a job in corporate America, where I was working 5 times as many hours. But good old corporate America says, this is how much you're going to make, no matter how much money you make for us. And I was working at JP Chase prior to getting into real estate. And I'll never forget, they opened up a branch at Ridge Road. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted it. It was a shitty location for growing a balance sheet. I grew that balance sheet over $17 million in 1 year. 0 commission check, 0 bonus. Here's your $62,500 salary that we got. And I sat back and I went home, and I remember just sitting there talking to my wife. And I said, you know, I just made them $17 million by calling on people that I know, convincing them to allow me to handle their business banking, you know, getting them lower rates on their FTPS, their merchant services, whatever, doing auto loans, doing mortgages, having, you know, choosing the right investment guy to come in here and all that. And I didn't make a dime off it. I can't do this anymore.
Did they give you a trophy at the end of the year?
No, there's no trophy. There's no trophy.
Okay.
But I also got passed over because I should have been the next district manager. And I got passed over because of diversity quotas. They promoted a guy that wasn't even in the top 25 in Florida. I was number 2. They promoted based on nothing more than the color of their skin. That person's no longer with JP Morgan. Neither am I. And it's just amazing to me how, you know, going back to the difference on my podcast, I talk about the successes and setbacks of running a business. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you're a realtor, mortgage lender, automotive, cryotherapy, doesn't matter. You can tell people that love what they do for a living. And we have some common friends that, you know, that they just hate going, even though they own the business, they just hate going there every day. They bitch about it constantly. Constantly. I don't think anybody's ever going to hear me complain about being a realtor. I love what I do. Love what I do. I share sometimes
frustrations,
things that happen that people don't understand.
Right.
The same way that I would ask if I don't understand, say, mechanics on a car. I know the basics, but I don't know it to the level that some guys do. Right. You know, or women for that matter. There's amazing women mechanics that are out there as well. But I'll sit there and I'll inquire and I'll ask. I don't want to just rely on YouTube. But in our industry, there's nothing on YouTube that will help a buyer or a seller. So if you ever try to watch some of the videos about home sales and stuff like that, I'll try to get the client perspective, things like that. But that's what people just don't understand is the setbacks. They hear about the successes. There's a lot of like memes out there. When a realtor closes on a house, they'll tell 5 million people about it, and they'll have some "yay, just sold" thing that's out there, right? And well, they don't ever market themselves other than, "Hey, I just sold." They do the same thing over and over and over. And I talked about this in the last class that we had done in Alliance Group, where I look at other realtors. I'm talking realtors that sell more than what I do, but I've watched their numbers go down and down and down. I've watched their engagement on their posts go down and down and down. Why? Because they do the same thing. You have to be ahead of the curve. And I don't care, what you do, but it has to be uniquely something for you.
Right. And I think people want to hear the story because, and we talk about it a lot because we work together a lot, and we've gone through some like hellacious situations.
But you learn from them.
You learn from them, and in our industry, and again, every industry has their issues,
And it's what you do with it.
But I mean, a lot of what we do every single day is problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being proactive and trying to prevent problems.
Being a mental therapist is the hardest part of being a realtor.
Yes.
We are unlicensed psychiatrists.
I started to go to school for this, and then I stopped going, and I'm like, oh, become a real estate agent instead. Wow. Little did I know. Little did I know. And, and one of the conversations we had before I got licensed is, and I remember when we were talking and I was asking you, how do I do this? And you're like, well, I don't know exactly what I asked you, to be honest. I can't remember, a long time ago. But I just remember you telling me that every house is different, and every, transaction, every client, every scenario is different. And I didn't understand that until I got into the industry, and I'm like,
it's funny.
Yeah.
It's the skeleton that's the same, but all the pieces that make it up are very different.
It goes along the line of processes.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in the military, we had a process for everything. If you're getting ready to deploy, this is what you do. If you're getting ready to go out to jungle warfare training, this is what you do. If you're having a down day or something like that, or if you're on, BEQ duties, barracks, enlisted quarters, if you're on barracks duty, this is what you have to do. There's always an SOP for that, standard operating procedure. I run my business the exact same way. Every house, before I go enlist it, I pull up the permits. I'm going to pull up the previous deed to see how much, maybe how much they bought it for, or if there's any other issues that came up. I'm going to go in the MLS and I'm going to look at the previous attachments for the seller disclosures, things like that. So I have ammunition going in, because a lot of times when you go in and you talk to a seller and you're having a face-to-face listing appointment and they've lived there for 10 years, they might have forgotten things. Right. The biggest one is usually if they haven't replaced the AC, they have no clue on how old it is. But hey, we did have ABC air conditioning install it. Guess what? They never pulled a permit. Right. Your roof, they never pulled a permit. Well, how can they do that? Well, because they were trying to save $125 or $75. And guess what? ABC Roofing went out of business. So now you have an unpermitted roof. Guess what? An inspector is going to find that. A homeowner's insurance company is going to find that. What's the way to get around it? And then I'll share with them the ways to go ahead and get around it. Mm-hmm. And so that to me is what separates the good from the great. And it amazes me sometimes, because there are some high producing realtors. There's one that I will not do her voice on this podcast, but I got her voice down to a science. Everybody always says, like, man, you sound exactly like her. But her one thing that she'll do every time, she is an expert on electrical panels. Clients will go and tour the house. Every house I listed that she's ever shown, first thing she does, goes to the garage or where's the panel? Because she hangs her hat on that knowledge. Right. I've never seen her do that with a water heater. She doesn't know how to read the age tag that's on an air conditioner. But man, she's on that Zinsco panel, which is uninsurable, And she'll make sure to show off in front of her clients saying, hey, I saw that it's a Zinsco or a Westinghouse panel. You know that's uninsurable, right? Is your seller willing to go ahead? She's just trying to impress her client. Great, that works for her. But then you start getting to the meat and potatoes of the contract. Literally, I can hear the helium coming out of the balloon as I'm doing the deal. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, you sell $30 or $40 million a year. Like, you're a big time agent. You don't know jack. But it happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But if that works for her, fantastic. She gets by on a super sweet personality. She's one of the sweetest realtors you'll ever work with. And there are more that operate in that space that operate under the finite details, because there's nothing more that I enjoy than when I meet my match. Someone else that's a real estate nerd and I get in a deal, and I shouldn't call them a real estate nerd, just very prepared. Very prepared. And we are on the same page to say, hey, our job is to get this to the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make this easy.
Let's work as a team.
And I'll sit back and call them up and say, hey, I know that, if they're the listing agent, we're missing a lead-based paint because the house was, built in 75. You might have missed that on the listing. Yeah, we actually did. Thanks for reminding me. I'll get them to sign it. I'll send it right over. I don't have to be a jerk about it.
Right.
And then I'll say, by the way, hey, I spoke to the lender. The lender said they have some concerns about this, this, and this. I'm just keeping you updated, and I'll let you know I should have a decision in 48 hours. As long as you keep people informed. Yeah. To me, it's like marriage. Mm-hmm. I got in the same social media guy that I was talking about the other day, or not the other day, 5 minutes ago here on the podcast, put out a post about how difficult marriage was. I said, I've been with the same woman 25 years. I don't find it difficult. Yeah. I said, I just don't. And then basically saying, no, you're lying. All marriages fight and all this other stuff. I go, I can count on one hand the number of times that I've legitimately fought with my wife, but it never lasted overnight. We just squash it. We move on. Life is too short for that. My goal is to be the opposite of my parents. My parents were always fighting. They got divorced when I was in high school. I was homeless, living on the streets because they both went their separate ways. And that's why I went in the Marine Corps, because I had to put a roof over my head. I was living with my high school coach who took me in. I don't want my kids to see that. Right. Ever. Because your kids are a product of your environment. My brother and sister, same thing. Sister's in a very happy marriage. Brother, I think he's still in a happy marriage. Haven't seen him in a long time. He kind of disappeared, did his own thing. But we're all still married. And for me, like, my job, you guys ever listen to the last lecture? Mm-hmm. If you go on YouTube, there's a guy by the name of Dr. Randy Pausch. Changed my life. Dr. Randy Pausch was from Carnegie Mellon University. He was a professor. He went on every talk show you can think of. He was on the Oprah. He was on Sally Jessy Raphael. He was on all those things. But he would go around giving this speech. He got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Well, Randy Pausch had amazing parents, and he shares it on this. I highly recommend watching it. If you just Google the last lecture or go to YouTube, the last lecture, and just watch, the Oprah Winfrey one is probably the best one just because he had a TV screen behind him. He showed his cancer scans. He got diagnosed immediately with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He goes, I'm stronger than most of you that are in this room. And he did 1-arm push-ups. He goes, I'm very physically strong, but internally my body's dying and I can do nothing. It's terminal. He goes, so he started from the beginning, and he said, I had great parents. They let me explore my imagination and they never judged me. So my goal was to be a Disney Imagineer. Now, he was smart enough. I mean, the guy went to Ivy League schools, all that other stuff, but he could never get into Disney. He kept all of his denial letters, and he showed him. He goes, here's the denial letter from Disney. Here's a denial letter. He goes, but I didn't stop because I just wanted it so bad. So he developed a skill that was useful to Disney and eventually became a Disney Imagineer, made a bunch of the rides that we all go on today. And to treat himself, because he had a team, as when you're a Disney Imagineer, you have a lot of assistants, stuff like that. He goes, so I took my team out, and then I decided I needed to buy myself a new car. He probably could have bought it a long time ago, but he bought a little cabriolet, convertible Volkswagen cabriolet. And he goes and he pulls up to, I think it was his sister's house or brother's house or something like that. And his nephew and niece were out there, and he takes a can of soda and he pours it in the back seat. And they're like, what are you doing? He goes, it's just a thing. It's just a thing. It doesn't mean anything. And then the next day, I think it was the next day or that afternoon, he took his nephew for a ride in the car. His nephew got sick and threw up in the back of the car. He got car sickness. And he goes, the fact that he saw me pour that soda did not crush that kid for, puking in a new car. He goes, and that meant the world to me, because he's going to remember me as, the uncle, and, I'm not going to yell and scream at him for puking in my new car, but it's just a thing. And that's why I told him, this is just a thing. We can clean it up.
Right.
I can't replace you. I think of that way with my wife and my kids and my dogs. I'm one of those, hard exterior guys, and the only soft spot that I have is my wife. The second I laid eyes on her, I knew I was marrying her. I remember what she's wearing. I remember what her hair looked like. And I tell her this stuff all the time. And she's like, you remember everything. I had 4 girlfriends at the time, by the way. I had 4. Not kidding. They ranged. I was 20. I was 22, 23 when I met her. I was stationed in Hawaii, and I was living in a place called Halava Heights, which is just at the bottom right by Aloha Stadium. And I had a roommate. Well, no, sorry. I was in Waikele. It was the Waikele apartment at that point. So I was living in Waikele, which is like the central part of the island. And it was like paradise. Like it was amazing. Well, no, I'm talking about like the condo complex I lived in, because it was just full of women. So
Excuse me.
so I had a 42-year-old government service worker that was very high up. Like I'm 99% positive she was CIA. She just couldn't tell me. She furnished my entire house. Then I had a nurse that lived next door. Also was kind of a girlfriend. Then I had a girl that was like an Air Force girl. And then there was one other, whatever. Literally the second I met my wife, I'm like, you're all done.
Goodbye.
Done. Literally done. And to this day, going back to the conversation we were having on social media about how, marriage is so tough. I said, why? I said, my goal every morning is to start my wife's day off on the right foot. I make her coffee every morning. If she wants breakfast, like this morning, she's like, yeah, I do want some breakfast this morning. Great. I'll make you an omelet. Boom, 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 boom. Because I'm an early riser. I'm usually up at 5 or 6 a.m. And my first hour, I don't want to touch a laptop. I don't want to touch a phone. Might turn on the news, and I'll watch different news sources just to see how they're all reporting the different thing and to try and find some truth in it. But my number one goal is to make her happy every day. And if I can make her life easier by starting the day off the right way, the rest of the day is easy. It's nothing, because I know how she wants her coffee, and she's starting to turn me into a freaking barista for Starbucks now. Can you put double whip on it? And this, and I'm like, oh God, what did I do now? But I don't care, because that, for the rest of my life, that is my one and only, period. And I want to make her life just as happy as it can be. And you've met my wife, me. I think, have you met my wife before?
I have not.
She's literally the sweetest person on earth.
She's the best. I love her.
Jamie I've never met anybody that said anything bad about her. Plenty of people say things about me. That's fine. Don't care. Rear view mirror.
She's just a ray of sunshine,
She sees the good in people.
I like the way that you speak of her. So
Yeah. She's the best. We should have had her on here.
Have her.
Yeah.
Have her.
Yeah.
Go nuts.
Yeah.
But it's just true, because like you don't see that anymore. Ever since like cell phones came out, we are in a world of quitters. People get married and they go like, I'm done with you. I'm going to divorce you now. And then the kids pay for it if they have kids. If they have pets, one takes one pet, one takes the other.
Step or something.
It's sickening to me.
Part of what they do. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like loyalty is a lost art. I'm a deathly loyal person. Deathly loyal person. Whether it's to my Marine Corps brothers and sisters for the rest of my life, if they need me, boom, I'm there. Doesn't matter when, where, how, I am there. If it's a close friend that I've known, I've in high school, probably 5 that I stay in touch with. And on the top of that mountain, always has and always will be my wife, because I went to the gym this morning and she couldn't go. I was lonely at the gym. We don't work out together. I just see her across there and she's doing her stuff. And it just makes me happy to watch her in her element doing her thing. Now she's into Taekwondo and she goes to Taekwondo tournaments and all that. And I love watching how happy certain things make her. But to me, that's the lost art, because if you look at, relationships in general, the declination of respect that happened between the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and you get to the 90s, divorce rates just go crazy
Mm-hmm.
because it's easy. It's easy to get distracted. You know, everybody wants.
Easy to give up.
It's very easy to give up,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not. It's takes zero effort to make someone happy. You just make it a routine. Every morning I have the same routine. Wake up, feed the dogs, make her coffee, tap her on her shoulder just to let her know, hey, your coffee's sitting on the nightstand for you, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, hey, do you want anything to eat? Because I'm going to make something. Yeah, great. You know, it's not difficult to do, but the same thing applies to business. If you cultivate those relationships, no matter what, you know, whether it's BNI or one of these local groups that I get invited to, Trinity is a small place. Newport Richey is a small place. Tampa is a small place. You know, you think about it, I think there's a couple million homes in Tampa. My goal every single year, I just want to sell 100. Make it a micro goal so it doesn't look like a big monster.
Mm-hmm.
And for years I hit that. Now you can, because home values have gone up and the inventory's gone down. Now I'm like, let me do 70, let me do 60, you know, whatever.
Right.
You know, I'm at the point I don't want to be stressed as much as I used to be. But it costs nothing to make someone happy. You know, and the art and the number of times I've talked about this, and I don't know a single realtor that's taken me up on it. I always write a handwritten note because nobody does it anymore. I had cards made up with my logo and everything else. I don't care what it's for. Thank you so much for trusting me along your home selling journey. I greatly appreciate you putting your trust and faith in me. Boom, 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 handwritten. When they get those typed cards, you just sign your name to it. They're like, it means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like those personal little touches. And I'm not the most sensitive guy in the world, but I like people to know that I genuinely care.
It makes a difference for sure.
It does.
It does. 100% it does. And how I got to that was a very good friend of mine. He was the number one salesman, I think he still is, on planet Earth for Hyundai. A guy named Bill Parente. Bill Parente is an awesome human being, an incredible salesperson, but not because he sells volume. There's transactional and there's relational. He is a relational salesperson and he is a master at it. But he's a master without having to think about it because he genuinely does care.
Mm-hmm.
And so he used to hand out these coffee mugs, which, by the way, Bill, if you're watching this, I want a new coffee mug because my other one's gone. But he used to have these coffee mugs and they were the greatest coffee mugs. They had a little gold rim around the top and you know, he'd make them in green or blue or whatever you wanted. But that people would, you know, I asked him, why did you do coffee mugs? He goes, everybody wakes up in the morning and drinks coffee. If my name is the first thing they're seeing every morning,
They remember them.
I'm like, that's freaking genius.
Yeah.
You know, and then coffee mugs went where you could order them like 50 and they were like
Bulk.
$1.29 a piece. Now they're like $7 a piece. I'm like, I'm not doing coffee mugs anymore. You know, I'd be handing out too many of the damn things. But I took that in the form of handwriting letters because I can't remember the last time I got a handwritten letter. Same thing with birthdays. This morning, friend, a lot of people know, and we all have common threads. It was their birthday on Facebook. Grab your phone.
Call them.
I posted on Facebook, just say, I posted, so everyone can see it. But then I reached out. Hey, man, hope you have a great birthday.
Yeah.
Seriously, I really appreciate what you do, you know, and thanks so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Hopefully we can get together. If you're not doing anything, I know you're probably with the wife and kids, but let's go grab a beer. You know, let's go fishing on my boat whenever you want to go.
People remember that.
It doesn't cost anything to be nice. It costs nothing to be nice. And that's what builds businesses. And that's where people, I think, lose it, is that once the transaction's over, they forget.
Mm-hmm.
I texted a guy 2 days ago because he saw my Instagram post. I was out fishing. We were catching a bunch of red grouper and we limited out. And then we caught amberjack. We ran into some tuna and all kinds of stuff. We were pretty far out. Don't do that on a single outboard, by the way. I was on my last little tiny bit of gas before we got there. I'm like, please don't break down, because I had clients on board. But I reached out to a guy that had bought a house from me 2 years ago. At the time, it was one of the biggest sales I ever made. It was in Dunedin. It was like 1.4 million, something like that. And I said, hey, when's the next time you're coming in town? I know you only use that place 3-4 times a year. Let's go fishing.
Right.
He sent me a referral. He goes, hey, I got another doctor wants to buy a house from you. I really appreciate you thinking about me. I don't think we're going to make it down till probably the fall. Great. When you come down, let's go fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's do it. But just the fact of reaching out, like out of nowhere,
Right.
you just have to do that. And it works. It works. You know, it's about how many people in my lifetime, I want my tombstone to say, at least I wasn't boring.
That you're not.
I'm definitely not boring, but I want people to know that I actually cared about them.
Right.
Because there's a difference between saying and doing. And I know that there's a perception that's out there that I've dealt with for years where people just think I'm a hard ass. And that's fine. Maybe they interpret the amount that I care as being, you know, too over the top or something. But I will defend my clients with every ounce of my being, and I will treat their money like it's my money. But at the same time, I will always go out of my way. And I think you saw this, the Spring Hill one that we put on. Half the room didn't know their numbers. And I think you were actually on that panel with me, and you said it. You go, you know everybody's numbers at all time. I'm like, yeah, you did 5 million last year. You did 15. You did 25. That's my job. No, you're good. That's my job. My job is to know everything going on in the real estate world for a number of different reasons. I study other brokerages' numbers and other agents' numbers, because if I go up against them on a listing appointment, I want to know what they did. I want to know what geographic area that they sell most in. I want to know how many members are on their team. Why? Knowledge is power. You know, it's the same as that book, Beating the Mega Agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that was the most terrifying thing I ever did. I went on a listing appointment. I went against a huge team. But I don't read that much. I can read. I just don't like reading. But I listened to that book on tape or on Spotify or something like that. I forgot where it was. And it was about how to beat the mega agents. So I said, you know what? I can do this. And I went into that appointment and I pointed out to the seller why they should go with me and what their experience is going to be like with someone else. I don't badmouth agents. I simply say, hey, Lindsay, I know you're considering multiple agents. Why don't you go ahead and read their Google reviews? Go ahead and read mine. Oh, wow, they have 500 Google reviews. Yeah. Go ahead and read through those. You're never going to hear from the leader of the team. You're going to get some 6 months out of real estate school agent that's going to fumble through it. You're most likely going to talk to an assistant. They're going to hold your offers for 2 or 3 days so they can try to find buyers on both sides and not work in your best interest. Look, the reviews will tell you.
Right.
And it's as simple as that. I can go on stats with anybody. I try not to go on based on stats. I go on service. This is what you're going to get from me. This is what you're going to get from somebody else. And the number of callbacks that I get because I do what I say what I do, and I tell them in the listing appointment, when we're done here, you're going to get this from me. You're going to get this from me. I'm going to follow up with you. I am not going to spam you. I'm not that guy. I want your business. I don't need your business. I have plenty of clients, but I generally want to work with you. And there's a lot that, God, it feels good to tell somebody to go away. That's the best part, is when you can say, you know what, we're not the right fit. Because if you can tell when you walk into a house, if somebody's going to call you 55 times a day. I saw the Zillow likes today and we're down to 30. And yesterday we were at 57. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're at a Wednesday, also known as hump day. And on Mondays, people get to work and they look on Zillow at houses.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? I'm going to list your house on a Thursday. Mike, why are you going to do that? Why? Because people are planning their weekend out. So they're going to look at your listing on Thursday. We'll do an open house Saturday, have no showings until the open house. And then you're going to get a ton of traffic. So I don't want to inconvenience you because your house is my house. And I don't want 50 million people kicking me out of my house to go look at it. So I'm going to handle all that on the weekend. Best thing ever.
Right.
The market we're in now is a little bit more challenging, but there's still ways to get around it.
Sure.
And if you put like that nice snuggie around someone and you make them feel warm and cozy, like they're a member of your family, and you genuinely do mean it, they respond. They refer business. And like we talked about in the very beginning, Kayla,
Mm-hmm.
is we have the same circle. I'd say 90% of our circle is the same people.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
We have other agents that are in our brokerage. They live in that same circle too.
Mhm.
And I learned a long time ago, because you and I have done deals for the same people. Why would I get upset with that?
You can't.
There's so many agents that lose relationships because you chose, Jimmy. You didn't choose me. How dare you? Okay, well, instead of doing that, look back introspectively. What did I do that I didn't earn your business? And I won't say that to them. And I'll sit back and I'll think, but you know what? I didn't touch base with them for a few months.
Right.
And so-and-so was out at Chasco and I saw them, they took a picture together. That's probably why he's a realtor. I know a bunch of realtors. I'm just going to go with that one. Great. Go with them. By the way, if there's anything I can help with, let me know. If you want me to market and advertise it, even though it's not my listing, I'm happy to do it. You catch more bees with honey. But in a small town, you can't get upset over that because we all know the same people. We go to the same damn restaurants. There's only a handful in Trinity you can even go to. We go to the same fitness clubs for the most part. But that's just to me, that's just a part of life. And I started writing a book in 2021. I got done with the first 2 chapters. Then I looked into publishing and I was like, it's just not worth it. I still might finish it and I still might self-publish it just to make, no money on it whatsoever, but just to do it. So the name of the book is Make Me Feel Important. Every time I walk into a room, including with you two right now, it doesn't matter where I go, I always picture somebody with a sticky note on their forehead that says, make me feel important. Whether that's building them up, whether that's just including them in a conversation or opening up myself to talk to them, about whatever they want to talk about. You have to make people feel important because everyone gets passed by every day. That's also what I do with my wife. How can I make her day better? Every single day.
Yeah, I do too. And I think on that note, it's probably a good ending point because I do have to go.
Yeah. Phone's been blowing up a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't know how long we have our room for, but I think that we could sit here and talk for literally all day, every day. And I think that we should have you on again and we can talk about your potential book.
I'm down. I'm down. If you guys have any questions before we leave, let me know. Yeah. I'm happy to. I'm an open book. I don't hide things. I am who I am.
You made it very easy for us because you don't even pause or let us really,
Sorry.
But you answer the questions and give us information without us having to ask it. So, I think it's great. So, like I said, I sit here and listen to you and talk to you all day, every day for hours and hours. So, but again, we don't have the time.
Until next time. Then.
Well, I'm glad that you both felt that way.
Yeah.
To me, it means a lot because I'm passionate about what I do.
Yeah.
I'm passionate as far as being a human being with other people. And I would say don't always judge a book by its cover because although people see me as having a hard exterior and stuff like that, I have one rule. Don't mess with my wife, my kids, or my dogs. Other than that, I can take anything.
Right.
And you get one chance to go around the sun. And for me, I want to make it the best I can. I want to explore as many places as I can go to. I want to talk to as many people as I can. Talk to a random stranger one day. It's the best thing ever. Mm-hmm. I do it in Publix all the time. Freaks people out. They're sitting there looking at tomatoes or something. I'm like, where are you from? Let's have a conversation, And
That's
so,
cool. Stuff you find out along the way about people just by starting a conversation.
So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, has any questions, whether you're an agent, buyer, seller, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to get in touch with me, they can call me 727-415-0922. If you're watching the podcast, I don't care if you're another realtor, lender, whatever. I'm always happy to help with anything. I'm pretty darn good at marketing and advertising. I'm even better at real estate. And I'm not so bad at fishing either, but that's the best way to get in touch with me. They can go on my Instagram. I'm the Tampa Realtor. I think it's _Tampa Realtor. They can go on my Facebook page if they want to private message me. But there is, you get one chance to do the right thing in life. And I hope that people felt that, from being on the podcast. I would love to come in here again.
Yeah, let's do it.
If you want to have me on, we'll maybe do it a little different style. I felt like I talked too much today. Sorry about that.
No, you're totally fine. I was sitting here enjoying it. So if I didn't have to leave, then we could stay here till, I don't know, tomorrow.
I want to
The
plug.
that was behind is
We need to bring
Jumbo,
Jamie
too.
on.
Yeah.
We need to
Do
bring
it.
Jamie on with you next time.
She'll come in.
Yeah.
She'll come in.
So let's get that on the books.
Deal. One thing I would like to plug, and I also sit on the board of directors for a veterans charity for CryoEase 22. That's CryoEase out in Trinity. So we're putting on a golf tournament in May, and that 100%. This is why I love this charity. 100% of the proceeds, we don't do administrative cost, all that crap. 100% go towards treating veterans, and in that center, we offer therapies that the VA does not and will not offer, and we are raising money so we can treat veterans for free for whatever they need. We have paralyzed guys that come in there, PTSD. There's a number of different modalities. I don't want to go into too many of the different things because I know we got to get going, but that is the greatest charity and one of the greatest organizations I've ever been a part of. And you talk about people that put other people first, which is why I really dig it, is all they want to do is help. They're not looking to make money. The civilians that come in there, they have to pay for some of the services or pay for all the services, but we are trying to grow this thing. Tunnel to Towers approached us because of the work that we're doing. And if you haven't met Ryder Gaston, meet him.
We'll get him on. Here.
He's a freaking hell of a human being.
Yeah.
Ryder and his family are some really, really special people. And I think that would be a great guest for you guys to have. But as far as the golf tournament goes, if there's any business owners that are out there, it's going to be at Seven Springs Golf Club. It's on my Facebook. It's on the CryoEase page as well. We have about half of the spots sold already. But we would love to get all the spots filled. It's going to be a great event. Christos is going to be doing the food for it. And that's the one thing that I really did want to plug.
Okay.
And I'll put you guys in touch with Ryder if you want to have him on.
I just found it, so
And
we'll make
we'll
sure
share
that
it.
we post it too.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank
for
you so
coming.
much. And
Yeah.
we'll chat later about getting you and Jamie on and Ryder and everything and get you guys on the books.
Sounds amazing. Thanks so much for having me, and I really appreciate it.
Thank
All right.
you.